Manitoba is a multimedia initiative highlighting energy-efficient technologies for Manitoba's diverse communities, including newcomers and refugees. By addressing barriers such as availability and awareness, it aims to educate and expand the market for these technologies. My name is Ryan Funk. Join me as we explore efficient technologies and programs here in Manitoba with Greentoba.
So what is the history of Evolve Green? We are 15 years in the industry. We won the Consumer's Choice Award for 2024, which is probably...
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. We're really excited. They're going to shift it to Evolve Energy, obviously, because same team. So very exciting. People didn't even know what renewable energy was. That was actually the first question. You call yourself a renewable energy business, like, what are you? Really, we started really at the beginning, so it was all about education, working with the schools, working with the government and different programs, BC Ferries. We've done lots of really cool stuff with research centers up north. Love that kind of work. But as we kind of changed and grew, it just became so much more. It really did. So we have an industry that is now here to stay. It's at the beginning, it was, I went worldwide and now I'm like across 3 provinces. If that makes sense, that's how much bigger it is here at home. And that's exciting. The technology is so amazing. We have 25-year warranties on microinverters. I mean, you don't get that on your furnace. If you get a 5-year warranty on your furnace, you're lucky, right? The solar panels, 25, 30 years, that's the standard. It's normal.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
It's very solid technology and it's not new. I mean, it's been around for a long time. So they've been developing some really solid technology and it's all CSA approved and you don't have to have batteries if you don't want to. It just goes directly into your electrical panels. So we're offsetting right away. So if your fridge is on, it's supplying the solar. If your furnace is on, it's supplying the solar. And if the solar is not there, then the hydro's supplying the solar for, or the energy for that item. Now, it's like a flask. If you imagine that your electrical panel is like, it's filling up with energy from the solar. And as it tips over, it's now serviced all your breakers. It's going to start selling to Manitoba Hydro. That's the way it works. Very simple. You have a bi-directional meter installed by Hydro that every time it sells, it's actually going to show on a screen on there how much it's sold. So very simple. And then when you need energy, it just goes the other way. You can literally watch the arrows. The arrows will go one way, and then all of a sudden a big load will come on that the solar can't fully do, and hydro will kick in. So it's really low maintenance. We're talking about Manitoba because we do have enough precipitation here that even the panels don't really, unless you're on a gravel road, get very dusty even. So there's really not very much. We have confirmed through different studies that if we leave the snow on the panels for, let's say, a roof mount that's in the city of Winnipeg and they don't want to get up there and shovel the snow off, you don't have to. Because of the low light time of year, it only is representative of about 4.9% of the total production. That's all you're going to get back if you're shoveling the snow.
So you're not getting a lot back come in winter sort of thing.
No, you're not. You're not losing a lot because a lot of those roofs are not tilted perfectly for winter. Like here, 65 degrees in December. So that's quite a tilt. I mean, we're talking, you'd have to have a pretty significant tilt on your panels in order to get maximum for that time of year. And we use 42 degrees as an average for the best year round, like as a fixed ground mount array. But if it's on the roof and you're only 18 degrees, don't clear it unless you've got a solid week of sunshine. I mean, it's just not worth it. We tell people just leave it because you're just, you know what I mean? You're getting to equal days once you hit end of February, March. So 8 months of the year, you're golden. And in the summer, we have such long days, you really do capitalize on that. So it's just the way Manitoba works. We are in the sun belt of Canada. The tip of us and going up all in through Brandon, we have the best sun in Canada. We should be doing solar. That's, it's just a hands down, it's an easy equation.
You gave us a really good picture, a little bit of how it works, the flask analogy. Your energy comes in. If there's more coming in, well, then some of it gets sold off. If not, it's being used within your equipment and appliances in your home. So, from the sounds of it, that's kind of the goal, this kind of energy independence sort of thing, that you're not as reliant on the other services and things such as hydro, or depending on where you are, like natural gas or other items like that.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe let's explore a little bit more about exactly how do solar panels work, and what is the benefits of having it on your home and kind of trying to achieve that energy independence.
So it really depends what your goal is. So right now with the incentive programs out there, we do have a lot of people that are doing this. I'm not saying they're not green, but they want to see the green as well. So they're looking at their return for investment. So we do design based on return for investment if that's the goal. So if the goal is to try to have the best return for investment, we are going to make that solar system smaller. We don't want it to sell to hydro. We want it to be utilized every time it's producing, primarily. Doesn't mean it won't sell a little in June, obviously, but with these smaller systems, our return for investment can be anywhere from 8 to 12%, depending on how hard it was to install it. So that's the cost of the system. So because we have like the Greener Home program, they're going to get $5,000 back for a 5 kilowatt solar system, right? And then they're going to get another $2,500 back from the Efficiency Manitoba program, because it's 50 cents a watt to a maximum of $5,000, which is so they can install up to a 10 kilowatt and still get 5,000. All these things though reduce that return for investment, and then they can take all of that and they can get an interest-free loan for 10 years.
Bad. That's
I know,
a pretty
we've
good
got
deal.
some amazing programs right now, and we're hoping for more because energy adoption really helps. Actually, it helps the grid, because what happens is then if you get a microgrid going on, so not every house, but every second or third house, let's say in an urban setting, it helps take off those peak loads. Even in the wintertime, not all of them will have snow on them because it'll be all different degrees. Ours are, if there's snow here, this part is still producing. So we still have some energy. So it does help the total equation. And it helps takes the pressure off the grid as well. For those who want to have backup batteries, and I do on my home, I'll tell you what I got going on here. I love my system. So what we do is we have a microinverter system, because then everything is independent to the individual solar panel. But then I have a back-end inverter that has a battery bank. And this battery bank, I can utilize some of that stored energy from the leftover energy that I didn't want to sell at nighttime. Because at night, after your solar shuts off for the day on a system that doesn't have batteries, you're buying again from the grid. So I actually can set my time of day. And with that time of day, I can say I want 2,000 watts of my batteries to supply here. And then at this time, and then I just continue, right, all the way through. So I make sure that I have enough battery backup in case there's a grid outage for my essential load panel. But I am utilizing the energy of the overproduction during the evening and night hours. So that's the best way to do it.
This sort of technology, I think, is important when you're talking about helping offset the grid and reducing grid loads, because across Canada, we're seeing in a lot of provinces some of the challenges in our grid systems. Prices are going up dramatically, as well as we're continuing to grow the province. Here in Manitoba, they want to have in like 5 years or something, 5 to 10 years, 500,000 newcomers come to the province. Well, that's a lot of energy for all those homes and apartment buildings and
That's
things
the
like
tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of policies that are pushing more to EV cars. So that's going to stimulate a lot more energy consumption need. And also we're trying to come away from gas. So in order to get to net zero for carbon neutral, like for the fossil fuel, you have to increase how much you're going to need. So Hydro said, oh, well, we're going to need to double our infrastructure. Road to Resiliency, we honestly, with Kurt Hall over at Climate Connection, the consultants, we on the backdrop, what we did is we went in and took a hard look. Do we really have to do that? And we found out that with the mixed technologies, we really don't need to do that. We just need firmer adoption from our government. So one of the problems we're facing here in Manitoba, which is unique to Manitoba, we own our hydro as Manitobans, right? So they've had to adopt different policies because of EV cars, actually, is one of the problems. There hasn't been a huge update in the laws or whatever, or the bills for how we run this province. And that's been pretty key here. So Bill 36 was meant to revamp the whole thing so that you could sell energy here. Because right now you can only sell energy to hydro. So when an EV car plugs in, you're buying energy. That's the reason why you have to buy credits on a card and then go plug in that card or that number or whatever credit you bought to buy. So they want to be able to sell it direct. Does that make sense? Instead, so you just put in your credit card because it's legally not allowed for them to sell energy. That's the problem. Okay, so now that's the premise, and there was a whole bunch of other things that needed revamping. But the long and the short of it, when it was written, it had a whole bunch of other language in it that actually made Manitobans step back and go, and our all of us climate people go, wait a minute, hang on. And that's because inside of that document is language that could see Manitoba Hydro be privatized, which is very frustrating, right? Because if it privatized, it could split into a whole bunch of different companies, number one, not just one. Right? You could get three companies. We're talking about Alberta. What do they have? They have an energy crisis. Why do they have it? Because of the price, right? So the ones that are on that floating structure are paying, some of them 35 cents a kilowatt. It's devastating to some families. They can't get off. Here in Manitoba, we're only 10 cents a kilowatt. I understand that. But if they privatize, you could be looking at like Saskatchewan's, what are they, 14.22? Might even be a bit higher. That's last year's numbers. So that's 14 cents a kilowatt. That's 4 cents, so if 10 is hard for you, imagine 14.
Yeah, imagine if it starts going up and up and up and up.
We've had subsidized power for a long time, and we've known this, right? We know because the Public Utilities Board does help to keep it lower, and that's been one of the mandates of Manitoba Hydro is to keep affordable energy for Manitobans. So this has been very key, a part of that whole discussion. So in this Bill 36, so I'm going to pull it back to that, that is now in third read. Okay, I know the writs dropped and there's no government right at this second, but once they come back, this is in third read. So it's already progressing quite far through. That bill reads that the government will be setting your rates every 3 years to a maximum of 5% hikes based on inflation. So what does our inflation looks like right now? Need I say more? So that would be a 5% jump, right? Year over year. And they would set it for a 3-year period. So in other words, an election term. Thinking, just throwing it out there, said 3-year terms. And they've also got the language in there to privatize. And we know we've already lost our firefighting for our forests. We've lost our tree farms. I hate to make this political, but there's a lot of things that have been sold off in the last 6 or so years. To be fair. So this is a part of our climate awareness crisis, what we're dealing with here in Manitoba with the lack of adoption. And I know that Efficiency Manitoba works with you. And I work with hydro and I work with efficiency. I know lots of people through there, given my years in this of experience. One of the things we'd like to see, because I am also the former director of MANSEA, which is Manitoba Sustainable Energy, and I work on it's the policy committee for Manitoba Sustainable Buildings organization as well. They do a lot of key work in policy here in Manitoba, trying to create better policies so that we have buildings that are built correctly and more environmentally conscious and lower energy footprint. And one of the things that collectively we've said is we'd like to see Efficiency Manitoba stop pushing gas. It's a simple thing, right? We want their mandate to change to lower fossil fuels. Right now, it's about conserving energy. right? So we would like to see that. So they see gas as an alternative to conserve electricity.
But you want to go further. You want to move away from that completely, sort of thing.
We want that gone because it doesn't match the federal mandate. And Canada has signed on to some pretty significant environmental accords. Trying to match up and marry up to those things, we already saw like no, not even 3 to 4 weeks ago, we saw when Hydro dropped the resilience road, their 20-year projection, and it it has almost no renewables in it. Like we were just like floored, like certain technologies were completely left out. And we know that, sorry, I was on CGOB about that too with Richard Kluche. So we know that we're not matching the federal policy at all here. They are not looking at it. The CEO of Hydro came on to CGOB, and one of the things she stated is it's not warm enough here for solar. That's not the way solar works. Batteries have trouble with cold. Solar works better in cold. You just have to do it right. So in other words, we want to see more solar farms. There's no solar farms here. It's not allowed because you're not allowed to sell energy other than to hydro.
So I guess that's part of your mandate about education and advocacy, letting people know about the steps we need to be taking forward to reach those federal goals, as well as, we're trying to help the planet and the environment. There's a lot of data coming out that's incredibly concerning, and it feels like maybe we need to have a fire lit under us to continue to develop because the technologies are there. We've been talking for about 20 minutes about different technologies and efficiencies that we can apply right here in Manitoba.
There's some battery technologies that are game changers that'll be fully on the market, just starting to reach now, and will be fully on the market within the next 5 years. They're safer, longer lasting, 50,000 life hours. They don't freeze, which is good because the new policies, the MEC, which is the Manitoba Electrical Code, which is adopted through the CEC code. Right now, they're on 2018 for outside of City of Winnipeg, 2021 version for inside of City of Winnipeg, are coming in with over-the-top stringent stuff about batteries. And they can't be in people spaces anymore, so urbanites will have a lot more difficulty. Sorry, did I use this? That sounds terrible, doesn't it? So people who live in cities who have less market share on their property, right, will be forced to have battery boxes outside of their home. Unless they have like a steel door that's certain millimeter thick in a bunded area and all of these things that are just not necessary for some of the technology. And if you're going to be putting it outside, now you got to be careful what kind of technology you're employing altogether. So we're really excited about the new battery technology because of this, because if it's got to go outside, let's have something really safe and long lasting then, right? So we're pretty excited about that. It is a blend of some of the things old and new. The technology, it incorporates capacitors, but it also has battery storage components, and it doesn't freeze. So it is very interesting, and it's getting more solid. And I think within 5 years, it'll be fully entrenched in the market. You won't see lithium the same as you do today.
To change government policy and to kind of move our governments forward, part of that comes from public awareness and getting the public on board with these sorts of programming, technologies, stuff like that. So how do we get more people on board with renewables, stuff that they can apply to their homes? And I mean, of course, you mentioned that, there's a lot of red tape and stuff that sometimes you have to go through. How do we continue to convince people that, maybe solar is a great option for your home?
Yeah, so City of Winnipeg is still 4 to 6 months to get anything on the roof there. We need to increase the speed. We have very short windows we probably are one of the only companies that installs in the winter. We do for safer ones that we can do. We have short windows, of time when it's really roofing season, if you will, right? So solar season
Yep.
is similar, right? We go crazy, but you have a client entering the process in June, and they're going, are we going to be installed in the summer? And we're going, no, right? You started too late. We even have people this fall going, well, we're not going to get installed this fall if we're just starting the process. And we're like, but start the process. so that you are ready for next spring or late winter or whatever we do with that customer. So really important to speed up this process. So that's a lot of our policies are around that. And I just finished with the city of Winnipeg. It took a year and a half. We got an expedited process there. I know it sounds like it's still long there. It is. But for the electrical at the end process, we got an expedited 10-day review maximum. So that's pretty impressive. And we were able to drop the electrical engineering stamp requirement, which isn't required anywhere else that I'm aware of for under 10 kilowatt in Canada, but they had it and it was very expensive. It was like $1,200 for the client extra. So that's not the engineering stamp for structural, which you do need if you're doing it on a home. But this is the electrical one. So for 50 amps of solar, you're not required in the city of Winnipeg. So under 10 kilowatts, you're not required now to have that electrical engineer stamp. Above that, you still are required.
You can't have like a massive panel, but you can have a smaller one that allows you to offset a little bit.
Yeah, so 10 kilowatts actually still pretty big. Average gas home that would, like, you're talking about your 1,400 square foot gas heat home, it would that would be 100%.
Well, okay. So it's more power than we think it is.
5 kilowatt, that 5,000 watt, that's probably half their needs. That 5 to 7 kilowatt is probably the most installed right now. Because we try to design a system that isn't 100%, right? Because your return for investment is not there. So what we try to do is if you have a gas heat home, we go up to about 50% offset. And if you have a electrical heat home, a regular furnace, then we go about 25% offset to start. And then if the client wants more, they can have more or less. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about Evolve Energy? And when they're thinking about potential solar, you mentioned several other programs before. Maybe if we can just reiterate on those, what sort of programs are available to help someone in that process?
Perfect. Well, first of all, you can find us at www.evolveenergy.ca, or you can give us a call at 1-866-5EVOLVE, or drop us an email at info@evolveenergy.ca. We'd love to chat with you about your system and your needs. So the programs, let's talk about those wonderful programs out there. The federal program is the Greener Home Program. You're going to need your driver's license and your roll number for your house. You're going to have to have been in your house for at least 6 months. When you go and you sign up for the program, you can reach it through links through our website, or just drop us a line and we'll send you the link to the government site. You will then sign in with your online banking. It helps to identify you. This is how you make the process quicker. So with that, once you're approved, it takes a few days, you'll get an email back with an AP number. And you need to also select your energy advisor when you make the application. There's 3 companies. So just go in and quickly check them out. Check off the box to which one you want to go with on that. And then you communicate with them right after you get your AP number to get your first inspection done. Once that's done, indicate to them what all you would like to do. Include the solar, and you would want to include other things if you're expressly going for the loan, like your windows, doors, insulation, because the program is not just for solar. So then after that, you can then get all your estimates together, and definitely, then you sign up for the Greener Home Loan Program, up to $40,000. And that one, you're going to have 10 years to pay it back. It's unsecure and it's 0 interest. Just a monthly payment. Your Greener Home grant, everybody asks, will be taken back towards that. So the $5,000 that you get for your upgrade, plus the $600 for the energy evaluator, so $5,600 maximum, will then be applied to that loan. If you don't have a loan, it'll just be a check that you get. After you're all complete and you have your bi-directional meter, you can then apply to Efficiency Manitoba for their solar program. Now, if you're just a residential program, you would apply after you get your bidirectional meter, and it is 50 cents a watt up to 10 kilowatts, so a maximum of $5,000. And they cut you a check, you get that check. You don't have to apply that to the loans. That's 10 grand in your pocket, or 5 grand in your pocket. So for businesses and farms, though, it works a little different. You have to apply and get pre-approved for that. So when you do that process, basically there's a little bit you have to put a deposit because all the design has to happen. You get pre-approved with Hydro. It goes into Solar Efficiency Manitoba. They pre-approve it, then you can proceed. But that one's to a maximum of 50 kilowatt solar. So it's $25,000 that you can get back on that one. So, it is worth it. All the process you do, they're significant, and you do get your rebates pretty readily.
Learning about green technologies is important. And what better way than to learn about it from someone who lives with it in their day-to-day life. And Randy Baldwin does just that.
Well, I've always lived in Manitoba, except for about 6 years when I graduated from university and worked in Alberta. I grew up on a farm in the Warren area in the South Interlake, and got my bachelor's degree in agricultural business management from the University of Manitoba. And then I worked in sales and marketing for the crop protection industry for a few years. And after that, we came back to Manitoba and we farmed for about 6 years. And I began doing management consulting in the 1990s. Continued to do that until I guess I'm semi-retired now, maybe retired, I'm not sure. But anyway, we're finding other more interesting things to do these days than consulting work. So in the course of the management consulting work, I guess was when I really started to get exposed to renewable energy. We did several projects looking at ethanol and then biodiesel and then later on biomass as sources of renewable energy. So that's when I really started to see the potential value of sustainable energy productions. And I guess it piqued my interest from there.
Yeah, and I'll definitely want to get a little bit more into that. Last time we were talking, you had a really interesting story about geothermal beforehand. But before all that, why don't you tell me a little bit about your current setup and the equipment that you're using on your home?
We moved to Gimli in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. And we had previously been in the Niverville area on an acreage. And that was where we were when we looked at the potential for geothermal. When we came to Gimli, I fairly quickly started to look at solar panels. We've got a good southern exposure on our roof, and because of my involvement in the Manitoba Sustainable Energy Association, I had gotten to know two of the leading solar electric contractors in Manitoba. So I was able to talk to them and actually got quotes from both of them before we went ahead with the system. And then in 2020, we just after we moved, we started to look into the feasibility of installing solar panels. And we proceeded with the project, hiring Evolve Green to install the system in the spring of 2022. So our system began producing electricity July the 20th. It took us a little while to get the two-way meter from Hydro and get it all set up. But once we did that, then we started producing, and it's a 12-panel system with a micro inverter for each 2 panels. So that means the microinverter converts the current from direct current to alternating current, which is, of course, what comes from the grid. If a converter was to fail, you'd only lose the one pair of panels. So that's one of the advantages of that, having the microconverters up on the roof where they are. We do have a few challenges with shading from a tall spruce tree, a dormer on the house, which causes shading on either side of the dormer at times during the day. And then we've got a loft above a garage, which is located southwest of our house, which causes shading in the later afternoons. So it's not a perfect location, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's doing the job right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in your work, you've started to get exposed to renewable energies and energy efficient sources. Why don't you walk me through a little bit about those early days when you're contemplating whether or not you would take that transition? Of course, it was until you moved into Gimli that you got solar panels, but you mentioned that.
Yes, we had quite seriously investigated geothermal because one of the leading geothermal installing companies is actually located in Niverville. It used to be known as Southern Comfort Mechanical, and they just go by the letters SCMI now. But actually, the owner of that company lived across the road from us, where we were on an acreage there. So we invited them to come over and talk about some ideas for what we might do. And initially, we were thinking of a system because we have two wells on the property. We thought we'd go with a system that drew water out of one well and discharged it into the other well, because we'd heard that was a way of setting up a system without having to do a bunch of directional drilling to put lines down into the ground. And it turned out that had some real challenges attached to it, as we just from corrosion, from impurities in the water, corroding up heat exchangers and stuff like that. And so they suggested we looked at a closed loop system, which is the Freon type liquid, a non-freezable liquid, and running it through a series of underground pipes. And
well, especially here in Manitoba, you don't want your pipes for heating and energy freezing up.
That's right. So once we got into the cost of that, it was going to be like $30,000, and we knew we weren't going to live in that house forever, so we just couldn't see the economic payback of that. It was going to be a big cash layout with a long-term payback that would have been well over 20 years. As it turned out, we lived in that house for about 20 years, but we didn't look at the geothermal until probably the last 5 years we were there. And there was no subsidy programs available at that point in time either. So it really became just a non-starter in terms of the economic feasibility of it, which was really quite disappointed us, because we were hoping it would have worked out in a more feasible way. But we liked a lot of the aspects of geothermal. We just couldn't justify it economically.
So now that you're in your new home, why did you want to make that change, looking into solar panels and wanting to offset power a little bit? Why'd you want to make that change?
I guess a couple of things came into play there. As I mentioned, my involvement in the Manitoba Sustainable Energy Association, I kind of felt like we talk about energy, using sustainable energy, and we encourage people to do that. So I thought, if I should walk the walk as well as talking the talk. So that was part of it. And then the other thing was, there was so much talk going back 2 and 3 years ago about how much hydro rates were going to have to increase over the next few years because of the huge debt that hydro had incurred, and just the way that the economic situation was for hydro, and the costs of the tremendous transmission lines they have to operate and all that. So that was also a major factor. We were anticipating 4 to 5% per year increases in hydro costs, and that combined with the subsidies that were available from Natural Resources Canada. And as it turned out, although we didn't know about this when we first started looking at the solar, Efficiency Manitoba brought in a subsidy program as well. So we were able to take advantage of both of those programs, which really helped.
Of course, it makes it a little easier to swallow when you're taking those first steps, right?
Yeah, it sure does. It made a tremendous amount of difference to the economic payback period of because the cost of those two, or the savings from those two programs, cut the cost of our system by about 50%, which then made the payback about, we're estimating probably 12 and a half years before we'd have the system paid off. So after that, then everything's kind of free and clear.
Not bad. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned and touched on it just a little bit of the installation and a little bit of the consultation process. But why don't you walk me through that for someone who might be thinking about it, but they might be a little hesitant, like, oh, what does it even look like? Mm-hmm. Consultation, installation. What did that process look like for you?
Yeah. The first thing we did was, because we knew the folks from both of these companies, we approached them both and asked them for quotations. And one of the first things we talked about with them was, what's the most rational size of system for us? Because my thinking was that we would want to produce enough solar power that we could use most of it ourselves, but not be putting a lot into the grid, because the amount that hydro pays, Manitoba Hydro pays about 6 cents a kilowatt hour for what we sell to them. They charge us about 10.5 cents for what we buy from the grid. The ideal situation is to use as much of the power ourselves that we produce as we can, and thereby displacing the 10.5 cent kilowatt hours that we would otherwise be buying. That was one concept, was just to size the system just large enough that we could meet our peak demand basically and not have a lot of excess. Or we could have gone with a larger system, which would have meant in the summertime we would have been selling quite a bit of power to Manitoba Hydro. But in the shoulder seasons, production is not as high from the solar panels. We would have still been displacing quite a bit of what we would have been purchasing from hydro. So in the end, we decided to go with a system that was just would basically meet our own needs.
Awesome. Thank you
in the
so
peak
much, Randy.
summer hours, but not produce a lot that we would then sell to hydro. And
Perfect.
that seemed
So
like
I
the
will
most
stop
economically
there.
feasible based on the size of the rebate from NRCan, from the Greener Homes program, was capped at $5,000. So even if we had put in a larger number of panels, which we could have done by putting some on our garage as well, the subsidy wasn't going to be any bigger. So it didn't make sense to go with a larger system in the end, and that was borne out when we got the estimates back from the two companies, that the cost of the larger system and considering battery storage and all those other things just didn't make sense for us.
So, I mean, that's part of the consultation process, right?
For sure.
Figuring out what is best for you.
And the companies were very good about discussing, what are the alternatives, what would be the optimum size for us, and looking at the buildings that we were looking at, putting them on both the garage and the house, and saying, what they thought the best configuration would be, and how they would suggest we proceed. So that experience was very good.
So now that you have these panels installed, you've gone through that whole process and you've been living with them for a little while, how has your life changed with these technologies?
Yeah, just to give you an idea of the amount of power we are producing, we had an estimated output number that we were given by the supplier, and of course, there's tremendous fluctuation between wintertime and summertime in terms of the amount of power, because of the angle of the sun's rays and the amount of shading you get when the sun is low in the sky and that sort of thing. So our system, since we began producing on July 20th of 2022, so about 15 months, we've produced about 8.63 megawatt hours of power. So that's about an average of 575 kilowatt hours per month. Although, as I said, it fluctuates quite a bit above and below that over the course of a year. According to the spreadsheet that I've been tracking the hydro costs on, for the first 9 months of 2023, we've paid Manitoba Hydro about $513 less than for the same period in 2022. So
that's a good chunk of change.
Hydro rates would have changed a bit, and there's been some changes in weather, but that indicates to me that, as I said, the payback period should be around 12 and a half years. So that we're really happy with that. The one thing that has changed in the way we do things in our house is that we realize that if we're going to get the optimum value from the solar production, we want to make sure that we're doing things like showering, washing clothes, washing dishes during the hours when we're producing solar electricity. So we've shifted our lifestyle around a little bit, and we just make sure we're doing those things when during the daylight hours. And it really hasn't been any big problem at all. It's just something we keep in the back of our minds now. And if we were to ever get an electric car, which we may well do someday, that would be another thing that would be powered from the solar. We'd be charging it during the day as well.
Yeah, so not too much of a change in your life, but you can make some shifts to make it more efficient and economical, but I guess that would be on the decision of the homeowner at that point.
Yeah, I suppose someone who was working outside their home where both the husband and wife were working at a job where they were both away from the home, it probably wouldn't be quite so practical to be doing the shift that we're able to do because we're basically home pretty much all the time. We have a home-based office when we are working. It's pretty easy for us to change our schedules a little bit.
Not only is it saving you and your wife money being on these solar panels, but I guess just what is your feelings knowing that, you're helping offset a little bit of the, the load on our grid, as well as, looking towards more sustainable futures?
Yeah, we certainly feel good about, making a contribution to the hopefully having a positive impact on climate change and things like that. So there's certainly a feeling that we're making our contribution, and so we were less concerned about the economics. If the economics had been marginally okay, we probably would have still done it. But knowing that the economics also worked, it was really a no-brainer to go ahead and do this.
Yeah, it's a win-win scenario.
Yes, that's right.
What sort of suggestions or advice would you give to others looking to add solar or other options potentially onto their home?
I guess the things that I would suggest is I just went to the NRCan website today to make sure that the subsidy program is still available, and it does appear that it is. One of the things they tell you, and it was certainly our experience, that they have a waiting list or a backlog, whatever you want to call it. It takes a long time to get the approval to proceed and to submit all the paperwork and everything that you need. It's just something you need to be aware of before you start, that it will be probably at least a year-long process. Just the planning, getting the quotations, and you should get at least two, I would say. And you should go through the type of discussion that we did of what would be the optimum size of system for you. If you were in a situation where you're living on an acreage and had lots of space to put a ground-mounted system in, then you could probably have almost an unlimited size of system. But in most cases, people will be putting it on their roofs, and that's going to limit how large you can go to begin with. And then you've got the issues of what makes the most economic sense for you, whether larger is better, or whether you just want to do the kind of sweet spot size of system that just basically provides the amount you would use in your probably your highest month of consumption.
So Randy, thank you so much for taking this time to chat with us and let our audience know a little bit about what the process looked like for you. So maybe if they're thinking about it, they'll have a better idea of potentially what they're getting into. Once again, can you kind of go over those subsidies that you utilized, and maybe if you're aware of any new ones that are available for someone who's looking to take these next steps?
The ones that we took advantage of is NRCan, which is Natural Resources Canada. It's called the Greener Homes Grant Program. And if you go to nrcan.ca, I think it is, look at Natural Resources Canada anyway. It's fairly prominent on their website, the Greener Homes Grant Program. And it provided us with a $5,000 grant for the project. And that's the maximum for the type of project we had. And then they also provided $600 towards the cost of the two home energy assessments that are required, that were done, of course, one before the installation of the solar or whatever upgrade you're going to do, if it's insulation or windows or whatever, and then one after the installation was done. And then the Efficiency Manitoba grant was up to a maximum of $2,500, is my understanding. And it's a very simple process to apply for that. So just go to Efficiency Manitoba website, and we'll be easily able to find the details on that. So those are the two that I know of. I believe Manitoba Hydro has some financing programs available. So if someone doesn't have the cash to lay out of their own pocket, or isn't able to borrow, I think Hydro will finance, and you can pay it back through your Hydro bill. on a monthly basis.
Is there any other final words that you like to leave for people? Maybe just your experiences on this journey into sustainable energy, and just your thoughts of taking those steps to not only save money, but to kind of make a difference in the world through offsetting on the grid and looking towards more sustainable futures.
I really feel that solar energy is the way of the future. It just seems so perfect in terms of its ability to produce energy from sunlight, and what's more readily available than that. And I think anything we can do, we should be trying to do to lessen our use of fossil fuels. While natural gas isn't as harmful as some of the other fossil fuels are, it still is a source of greenhouse gases, and we should try to reduce our consumption of it, as well as fuels that we're burning in vehicles and things like that. So I think it's something we should all consider doing very seriously.
This project was developed in partnership with Efficiency Manitoba. Find out more from industry experts and community advocates at u-channel.ca/Greentoba.